The things that we're showing you here on the side, this is the primary control panel. It was designed this way because ultimately we do want to have a transfer across platforms of the basic interface conventions of use, and that very soon we expect that electronic books and tablets are going to be the device, the appliance, if you will, the learning appliance that these things run on. So if you would imagine that this is something that you're not only chasing a mouse up and down, but you're touching with your thumb or your finger. And it's off to one side so that you've got the main body of the thing to be looking at. One other qualifier caveat is that while there's a series of icons we're going to show you, we're not about icons. We're not the final stage graphic artists who come in to say, well, this is the way that icon ought to look given your meaning intention. Right now, the icons, and in fact all the artwork and everything you see, everything I'm going to show you, is a placeholder for a relationship process. It's not in itself what we're about. Now, consistent with the conversation we've just had, that is to say, trying to develop technology that's fundamentally concerned with creating an interface, a relationship in which the learner uses their own meaning needs in ever more subtle ways to go home about a subject. So we've said, well, what are those meaning needs? Well, some of them we consider to be elemental, meaning that they deal with words, terms, phrases, acronyms, images, sound bites, piece parts of a learning experience rather than a larger learning experience. And that these are designed to respond to uncertainty, curiosity, ambiguity. So for example, we have created 12 categories of different kinds of reference support that might be generalizable into our environment. Dictionary, thesaurus, author's notes, biographical information, etymological information, quotes, citations, bibliographic references, speech, voice, music, or obviously more sound, alternative languages, encyclopedic-like elaborations, images, animations, video simulations, or things that don't fit into any of the categories discussed. The idea is this, that let's suppose that we're dealing with a word, okay, that happens to be George Washington, okay, and that what we've done for George Washington at the authoring process, which I'm going to describe, is put in some biographical information, some quotes of his, a picture of his, and maybe a soundbite of somebody reciting some aspect of a speech that was critical. So in the interface, when we'd click on the word George Washington, this would immediately fire up the quick reference indicator. And when I click on it, a relevant would fire down that we would call situationally relevant. It's not generally relevant. It's not a bunch of buttons that are generally mapped in. It's specifically relevant because there was a biography, there was quotations, there was an image, there was sound. Now let me demonstrate this a little bit more explicitly. Before going on, I would just articulate briefly this basic model that I carry around in my head about the relationship between instructional designers, curriculum content designers, and learners, which is very much as if there's this 4-foot cement wall with a straw through it, and that instructional designers design little things and stuff them through the hole, and the learners read them. And months and months and months downstream, somebody measures the learners and feeds that back to the facilitators, and that goes the process. What we're trying to do is radically alter that. So let's go to the learner side, for example. We really are cutting off a lot.
I think it's going to get fixed now.
Is that better now?
That's better.
Okay, good. Some of the stuff I'll explain later, and right now I'll just move along. So here, for example, is a little piece about the people that participated in the development of the evolution of the theory of gravity. So when I click on Einstein, the references that fire are actual references that are specific to what the system contains about Einstein right now. And they're all thematically organized. Again, the icons are things that will evolve in use with learners and be different between kindergartners and 7th graders. But at the moment, this indicates pretty obviously that there's a dictionary of biographical information, encyclopedia, image, movies, and sounds. Sorry about that. Hopefully that won't be so loud. Okay, so clicking on Einstein's encyclopedic elaboration, I see his early life. If I want to, I can scroll down through this. Notice how much information fired how fast for how long it takes to scroll through. That's the difference between HyperCard and the deep processing structures that we've designed. Or I can just click this arrow button up and make it the dominant screen. Or I can say, no, I've seen enough. And it flagged me where I left and I can go on. So sometimes it may be something real quick. Let me just take a quick look at the biographical information. So this is the biography of Einstein. The idea isn't multimedia. The idea isn't about pictures or sounds per se, but about the specific relevance of pictures or sounds to the specific kinds of meaning needs that learners have in the context of encountering something that's part of the content of a learning experience. So, and it would vary. When I look at Newton, it's a different batch, it's a different set. So there's a biographical information, image, and notice that the interface itself kind of situates according to the needs of what's being displayed. So, this section of the system we call situationally relevant references. And there's a number of different bandwidths of support, meaning need support, that the learner interface provides a learner that are quick, easy to articulate, easy to get response on and move through. Because, again, given what we said earlier about the significance of becoming meaning need or learning need oriented, that what we really want to do is allow the learner to be able to better come to understand their own learning needs, to be able to better use their learning needs to drive the process. Both because they're going to become better subject masters, but more importantly because they're going to become more effective participative learners in their own process. Then the system has to be able to respond to those learning needs, otherwise we teach the learner what we have taught him. In fact, that calls me to a quick sideline story or thought experiment. That one of the things that really drove us from the beginning of this process was, if we took the K-12 educational process and in a thought experiment for a moment said that from kindergarten to the 12th grade there was this corridor, this tube, and that everything we actually intended, every little experience that our curriculum and pedagogical wisdom intended was just windows and doors along that tube, then what I would be most concerned about would be the tube, not the windows or doors. That it is the nature of that tube that a child entering the K-12 system is, whether it's a kindergarten or the first grade or succeedingly thereafter, put into environments. The very nature of the environment is such that hundreds of times a day, certainly thousands of times over the course of their educational experiences, what's flowing in terms of the meaning in the classroom is causing the individual learner to have uncertainties, curiosities, and ambiguities floating up and down in them all day long. Some of which they're able to act on or articulate on, but most of which, because the system can't respond to them at all, they're learning tacitly, unconsciously to just suppress. Well, that's irrelevant. Suppress, suppress, suppress. And the scary notion is, and I think this is very attainable though, is that it is the main lesson of education that your learning needs are irrelevant to learning. Very powerfully. Thousands and thousands and thousands of times, that's the tacit lesson of education.